Well, good morning and welcome to this very special video. This video is going to be about everybody's favourite angel, Satan. And some of you probably won't want to hear about Satan, or won't want to hear about the war in heaven or Revelations 12 or any of that sort of stuff. So if you don't want to hear about it, turn it off now if you're only interested in the good news. But seen rightly, it is the good news. So and you'll if you follow along, you'll sort of get my take on it, and then you can integrate that with whatever your own take on things is. One of the things that I like to put up front in situations like this that have loaded meanings with things, such as the devil and fire and brimstone and all of that, hell, is that I've given what I see all the meaning it has for me. Right? We're looking at ideas. That's what we're looking at. Right, so heaven is a state of mind. I think even Pope, what's his name? The current Pope, when he first started his popeship, is that what it's called, Popehood? Came out, or no, it might have been Pope John Paul. But anyway, even the Catholic Pope said heaven is a state of mind, right? Now, heaven and hell, both states of mind, all right? And I'm going to bullet point different things here and try to tie it all together at the end. But heaven and hell, both states of mind. And when you have a heavenly state of mind, you have a peaceful mindset, a loving mindset, which is what we're all hopefully trying to be about, and healing through forgiveness, etc. When you don't have a heavenly state of mind, you have a chaotic state of mind, and chaos is the state of hell, or whatever you want to call it, the opposite of heaven, right? So you live in fear and all of that sort of stuff. So what we're looking at as an idea of spiritual transformation and spiritual healing and accepting atonement, accepting salvation through Jesus Christ, is perfecting or bringing ourselves to a heavenly state, right? Raising our vibration. We raise our vibration to a certain extent until it brings us, as it says in A Course in Miracles, close enough to heaven. That state of mind, that the love of God can reach down to us and raise us up to Him. Now, in a Christian context, and in the context that's presented through A Course in Miracles, it's very similar to the belief in Krishna consciousness 6,000 years before Jesus, where people in the East were visited by the prophet Krishna, or the teacher Krishna, and who today wear, and I mentioned this the other day in our Zoom, they have a little pigtail at the back, devotees of Krishna, because they believe that God will reach down to them and raise them up to Him. So, and it's funny, if you look at the parallels in many religions and spiritual disciplines and things, you'll find parallels amongst all sorts of things. And in one sense, it's very reassuring, and in another sense, it makes the idea of spiritual participation so real, or so much more real, that it can bring up a guilty past. It can bring up a past of feeling unworthy and all of this sort of stuff, which may have to be dealt with first before progress can be made, simply by realizing you're not guilty, you're a child of God, and the world can't tell you who you are. But for me anyway, all those similarities and all those cross-references that match up across the world, even from our own here in Australia, Aboriginal culture being one of the oldest cultures in the world, if not the oldest culture in the world, where the star tribes brought the knowledge of existence through the spirit and was maintained by the, let me get this right, I'm pretty sure it was the Wandjina, the cloud spirits or the sky spirits, and given to man. And man was born out of the centre of the earth. Man was made out of the centre of the earth, which in the middle of Australia. Very much like in the Bible, where Adam was formed out of the earth. So biblical references are useful, right? Satan you'll find as a biblical reference, and representing something symbolically, let's say to me, to you, perhaps to me, as an idea of my own state of mind, as an idea of where I seem to find myself in the Jacob's ladder of ascending or descending the journey of the soul. Right? Now, we're living in the resurrection, so descending is no longer an option. And you have to take that from me, I guess, because until you discover for yourself that there is no death, as Jesus promises, you're going to be living in that doubt. You're going to be living in the, what if there was no Jesus? What if Jesus was misquoted? And, you know, like, you'll have all these doubts, which is why we need to heal our minds through forgiveness and live our lives in faith, so we can come to our own conclusions about a higher authority and remove all doubt from our minds in the fact that God is everything, therefore there cannot be an opposite to unconditional love. Okay, so now here's the funny thing. Because the world, everything shows up symbolically, right? My state of mind, either a heavenly mind or a chaotic mind, or a peaceful mind or a chaotic mind, is represented outside of myself by symbols. Birds, trees, people, situations, language. Everything was developed post-schism. Everything is post-idea of separation. Into eternity where all is one, a tiny mad idea entered, at which the Son of God remembered not to laugh. Okay? From that forgetting, all of this comes forth. How? God knows. I've got no idea. That's why they had to send in Jesus. It's like, imagine a divine child being given a divine chemistry set, and he doesn't read the instructions, and boom, blows himself up, and then, where did you go? Well, I'm in another dimension, and they can see you, but they can't get to you, you know. So we better send Jesus. He's good at these conundrums. All right. So anyway, here we are. We're all here embracing Jesus and saying, thank you, Lord, and forgiving ourselves for fiddling with the chemistry set. We didn't know what we're doing. We're children of God. We're divine. We're guiltless. Right? There's no blame, but there is a sense of responsibility. Right? I got myself into this pickle. I've got to get myself out. So everything here is symbolic. It shows up symbolically in a way that through the maturity and understanding of our conceptual and lingual facilities, through the body, through the avatar, we can begin to understand the nature of our cause and effect relationships, so we can learn to make better choices, right? Based on a new goal that we're taking on board for ourselves, which is inner peace. We set our goal as inner peace, and then whatever shows up throughout the day to disturb our peace of mind, even if it's just a little tiny pinprick, we do the work. We sit quietly and we accept atonement for ourselves, and we sit there and breathe and process and offer it up to the Holy Spirit, right? So in the Course it says, you have been told to bring your darkness to the light, to offer your darkness, your illusions, your falsities about yourself to reason, right? To the light of reason. And very simply, if God is everything, there can be no form, no body. You're the spirit, not the flesh, etc. But nonetheless, everything shows up in symbols, in symbolic form, and it seems very real. This leaf seems very real. My fingers seem very real. And there's no point me trying to convince myself it's not real. I have to have the experience. Have to have an experience. Without an experience, it's just concepts. It's just a load of spiritual baloney. Okay? Hey, birdie. One of my little feathered friends is here. I think they're attracted to the energy of these teaching videos. Birds are very... I had just getting off the subject, I had a very interesting thing the other day. The birds were all sitting in the tops of the trees, all of them. I noticed around here, right in the very, very, very tops. And I noticed the birds in the tops of the trees, and normally they're flying around and doing whatever they're doing around here. And I thought, why are they all sitting in the tops of the trees? And then I realised that something something's got them spooked, or they're aware of something. Maybe there's a big eagle around or something. They don't want to be attacked or something. Anyway, about 10 seconds later, after I noticed, a jet plane, a military jet plane's doing a fly past with the sonic noise, and the noise, like the plane's already gone, but the noise is catching up, you know what I mean? So, and the birds somehow were aware of it, and they're not coming down out of the trees. It spooks them, right, that sonic boom. So, and you'll find that as a symbol, like when, and I'm just trying to present something here, but when, on a personal level, years ago, just before my illumination, I went and lived on a commune, okay, Gabbala community, which I don't think is around anymore, but Gabbala community in northern New South Wales, just north of Nimbin, which is a very spiritual, marijuana kind of peace and love area. And I was there for 3, 4, maybe 5 months. I can't really remember, but it wasn't more than 6 months anyway. And there was half a dozen teepees, and I had a teepee which I'd made myself. And but I didn't want to be in the main circle down in the big open clearing with all the teepees, because I was moving there, so I could just be totally off grid, be totally by myself. And like, I was happy to be in the community and help with the work and everything, but I just wanted my own, because my head was going mental. Right, so one of the things that occurred to me while I was living there was that I realised, without TV, without power, without media, without everything, I don't think mobile phones were a thing then. I think they were just coming in, the big brick and the cable. You had to, but anyway, without all that stuff, I was wearing no shoes, virtually naked all the time, just walking around naked on this massive property. Everyone was naked. You don't wear clothes on a community mostly, especially in the warm climate, but it might sound funny to some people if you're not used to that. But I noticed that I was connecting with nature more. When the wind changed direction, I would notice. When certain birds started singing at certain times of the day, I would notice. When things would happen at the creek, certain animals, wallabies and things, would come down to drink from the creek at certain times of day, I would notice. And I found that I was just automatically starting to tune in to the man-world relationship, right? Which is the same as man to world is the same as Father to Son, or God to Christ, as a fulfillment of a relationship, as a fulfillment on earth as a relationship. It's kind of falls into that bracket of going back to one's own prime connection. I don't really know how to say it, but I'm not talking about your basic animal self, although that's included, but there's a very core, primitive and primal thing that comes up. We haven't lost it just because we've put on a load of airs and graces and social courtesies and things like that. It's still in us, and if we're ever forced with being lost in the jungle or whatever, we quite easily can readapt to that kind of thing. And there's a lot of wilderness programs now you can participate in, and off-grid things that you can go and do as workshops and things, and they'll take you off-grid, and you'll start to see how it is that you begin to, and it's really amazing. I'm just getting excited. It was so, I remember being so excited about it, because it was the first real time that I started to really feel connected to nature. Like I was part of it. Like the blackfellas in our country, they say, we don't own the earth, we're part of the earth. We don't own the land, we're part of the land. Right? At least the true blacks. And they're as much of part of the land as the trees and everything, as all the other animals. They're not separate. They don't see themselves as having to dominate it or anything. They're an integral part, and all tribal cultures are like that. Anyway, getting off track, but the symbology of things showed me, in that sense for me, showed me a relationship connection that I definitely did not have living in my house with electricity, with all of these sorts of things and comforts, because I catered for myself in another kind of a way and didn't have to have or be dependent on that connection, on that natural connection. So, getting in a roundabout thing, I'm getting to the devil here. I'll tell you a story about, this is my satanic experience. And this goes way back to when I was about 17 or 17, I think. Oh no, 18. Lost my virginity at 18, so it was 18. When I was 18, I had my first sexual experience, and I got a girl pregnant. Not the first time, but, or was it after that? Going back so many years, it's a bit foggy. But anyway, I wasn't much older than that. I would have been 20 at the most. And I realised within myself, I wasn't committed to her enough to want to raise a child and have a family. I was only very young, and it just didn't feel right. And in those days, I don't know where we're at with things like this nowadays, but in those days, abortion was a thing. So I told her I'd rather if we had an abortion, or she had an abortion, because I wasn't capable mentally or financially, whatever, to look after a child, and I definitely wouldn't have made a good father in those days. Which, that's what she wanted as well. She didn't really want to go through with it either. She was a year younger than me, and I think, and anyway, long story short, went and had the abortion, and guilt came up in me. Guilt, like massive amounts of guilt. It brought up so much guilt because I felt like I'd stopped somebody else in their journey. Like at that time in my life, I was just beginning to look at spiritual themes and religion and all sorts of stuff. Like it was coming into my life quite thick and fast. But it brought up a lot of guilt, and I spent a lot of time, whenever I felt the guilt, I would fall into prayer and be like, Father, help me, God, help me, you know, like, what is this guilt? I hate it. I can't stand this guilt. It's the most horrible feeling. And nothing happened, nothing changed. And then one night, I had this Led Zeppelin poster. So John Paul Jones is my grandmother's sister's son, right, in Led Zeppelin. And I had this little claim to fame there in the world, but I had this poster of Led Zeppelin above my dressing table in my bedroom, and I had a couple of candles there. It was kind of like a little altar, I guess you could say, a temporal altar to temporal idols. And I still love Led Zeppelin, you know, great music. But I was a huge fan in those days, and that was before my mother found out I was a huge fan and actually told me that John Paul was a member of the family, you know. So anyway, one night in this fit of guilt, I prayed to the devil, right? This is, yeah, it's so funny now, I'm laughing now. And the person who asked me this question, the reason I'm making this video is because somebody asked me a question. They've had a satanic experience, or they're scared of a satanic experience, or something's going on with them regarding Satan. Right, so that's the whole reason I'm making this. I prayed to the devil, so please take this guilt. If God can't do it, maybe you can do it. Take this guilt from me, it's horrific. Anyway, I got the results of my thinking. That night, and I remember talking to my teacher, Ted, about this, and he didn't know where to go with it. He was like, well, I didn't know what to do. And I still don't, like I'm done with it now. But anyway, that night I had a dream. In the dream, I saw my finger. I forget which one it was. I don't even think there's a little, I can't tell. I think this one, my right index finger. I saw somebody take my hand, or my finger was like that, and there was a little jeweled knife, like a little pocket knife, tiny little knife, cut the tip of my finger. And I remember signing my name in a book in blood in my dream, right? And the book was on a rock, on a big rock, in a kind of a small cave, like a small alcove thing, and I could see a corridor going off, a stone corridor going off, and there was a red glow in the distance, like maybe fire or something, like hell, you know, like the entry to hell, or I don't know what it was. That was my dream, right? Kind of spooky, right? When I woke up from that dream in the morning, or maybe I woke up straight away, I can't remember, but I woke up from the dream and the end of my finger was cut. There was a thin cut, and blood, and there was some blood on my sheets, and I lost it. I really, like, whoa, I started to go insane. Like, I started to really lose control of my thoughts and everything. I pulled all the blankets off the bed thinking maybe there was something sharp in the bed. I went into the kitchen, checked all the knives, make sure I hadn't been sleepwalking and just cut my own finger, or I didn't know what to do. All right. Now, looking at it now, I can say without any concern that the power of mind to manifest some kind of phenomena in the world through symbols is the same power of mind for creating as it is for denial. I'm using that same Christ power for either healing or for more chaos, for a further descent down the ladder. Luckily, Jesus atoned for the sins of man, and this is as low as you can get. But it doesn't mean that the symbols and the ideas and the phenomena, I mean, all of this is phenomena. Look at it, trees, sky, how is it even possible? Right? It doesn't mean that these things don't show up. And I remember, I can't think of a name, not Louise L. Hay, she would never swear, but there was a woman, the thing that, I can't remember her name, but the thing that I remember as being famous to me for was one sentence: don't fuck with metaphysics, right? Don't fuck with the energy. Just be about your Father's business, stay true. Of course, I didn't know that then. I didn't know. I was just an innocent, ignorant boy of like 20 years old or something, and trying to figure it all out, and had this horrendous experience. I had another horrendous satanic experience on mushrooms, but I won't get into that one. That was prior to going straight. And I've done a video about psychedelics, so anyone who's interested can go back and watch that. But that also seemed very real. I didn't have a cut finger, but it seemed very real. But in this case, what happened was, with that finger, it drove me insane. It started something. It started me looking for a solution to getting out of hell and getting my name out of that book somehow, however that could be. I hadn't yet met Jesus. I hadn't yet had a Jesus experience. I hadn't even read the Bible at that stage, I don't think. I might have had a copy, maybe read a few pages by then. It wasn't until I met Richard the Garbo on Long Island. I would have been about 23, maybe. He gave me a Good News Bible, and I started actually reading it in earnest then. But it sent me on this spiral, this downward spiral, and I went everywhere. That was the real beginning of my searching for God, searching for meaning, searching for truth, searching for answers. The idea of the devil, the idea of angels, the idea of everything that you can put into a nutshell to try and explain or make sense of the particulars of separation, right, is all illusion. The archangels, the devil, all of it, it's all illusory, right? It's all part of a story relative to the third dimension. Prior to the third dimension, and prior to leaving the third dimension, let's say, or awakening from the third dimension, there's no such thing as all of the stories and things. These things are all symbolic that help me, man, to find a position, find a place wherein I can learn to make better choices regarding the idea that I think I'm separate from God, right? But until you actually realize that you think you're separate from God, nothing can change. You have to sort of come to this place of understanding where I didn't realize that I thought I was separate from God. I thought I was serving God. I thought I was all of these things. But until you understand what the nature of the physical world is and the symbolic nature of everything within it is, you can't do anything much about it. Atonement only works within the framework, but the source of atonement comes from outside of it. And I don't know if that's particularly helpful to even have that as a concept. The nature of the illusion, however, can seem very real, and like Jesus says, delay in time is tragic indeed. So We have volcanoes, we have plagues, we have all kinds of horrific things that can go on here that seem very real and give an element of reality to the experience, which is all to foster and maintain the illusion of separation through fear. Fear of the devil, fear of the afterlife, fear of judgment, fear of everything else is no more symbolic or no less symbolic than fear of bees or fear of heights or fear of anything. But within the framework of atonement, there are symbols that represent atonement and there are symbols that represent the world. Once you sort of start to see the world as like what it is and like it's just a slaughterhouse, everything here dies, you start to look for alternatives. And then you start to come into contact with symbols for more celestial, more heavenly, more higher up the Jacob's ladder kind of thing, right? So you start to come into contact with those sorts of symbols. Those sorts of symbols, because you're transitioning from lower to higher, you're raising your frequency, those sorts of symbols offer you certain associations that either help or hinder you climb the ladder, okay? Because you're learning to make better choices, you can quite easily see through the light of reason in your own mind that if I make choices that don't serve the greater good, or let's say satanic choices or selfish choices, it's all the same thing, or if I make heavenly choices or selfless choices, then up or down the ladder I go, or not that you can go down any further, but you either stay here until you choose again, right? Until you choose to participate in the greater good and then go up. But the prompts to want to participate in the greater good can be quite startling, quite frightening, quite horrific. I mean, I'm sure most people have had an experience of shock, you know, where you step out off the curb perhaps and a car misses you by, you know, and you're like that, and all of a sudden you're shocked back into your body. And it's like you can have an experience of a satanic or a and you see that word satanic, you know, or Satan or whatever, or hell, it comes loaded with so much of the fearful mechanism that man has attributed to it himself, right? So when you see it as simply part of an equation that you're learning to balance, part of an not balance, but an equation that you're learning to work out for yourself, the threat connotation and the fearful connotation of it just gets taken away. It's like Jesus says, you know, it's like the idea of hell is so scary because it represents the unknown to man, and man's put all these threat connotations on it himself. And it's like we do that with everything. Anything new that comes along, we seem to be automatically fearful of it and develop all these reasons why, you know, and we'll draw pictures, and I saw this thing with horns and a tail, and oh, and this is what it looked like. And you know, how many of us have had, you know, grandparents and great-grandparents that's, especially if you're my age, and one of my aunties in particular that I'm thinking of here, that talks about the boogeyman and talks about monsters and things that come from under the bed, and like, what the hell? Even Santa Claus is the same sort of thing as that, you know, like this guy that lives, it's a story representing something else in probably a more happier vibration, but you get the idea. It's just like, stop it. Stop telling stories. Stop making yourself fearful. It's like, by the power of your mind, you manifest your own experience, even if that looks like somebody's cutting your finger in your dream and then you wake up and it's actually bleeding. It's like, thank God for Jesus. Jesus atoned for all the sins of man, which are founded on death, on the belief in death, the belief in separation, which is founded on death, and therefore there is no death, okay? Therefore the idea of sin or the idea of error or the idea of an opposite to God's love no longer actually exists. But because we're in slow time, because we still find ourselves back in time before, let's say, the advent of our own personal liberation from the realm, we're still circumscribed by the nature of beliefs and experiences and phenomena as are expressed and available for inquiry and belief and whatever within the realm, right? But it's basically, it's a paper tiger. There's no teeth to anything here anymore, not since the last 2,030 years or whatever it is. So I hope that's answering the question. There's nothing to fear, right? So put your hand in Jesus' hand. Don't let go. Yes, wow, and thank you. If you can't do that, ask for help, right? Because everything's an opportunity. Everything's either a lesson or a blessing. Everything that's coming to me is an opportunity to take another step to the understanding and the realization of God's will as active in my life to show me the nature of love, even here in this place, where I'm remembering to laugh at my tiny mad idea of separation, or I'm not forgetting, or I'm forgetting not to laugh at see, I remembered not in eternity, and now I'm forgetting not. So to laugh at that tiny mad idea. I understand the spooky, scary, horrible idea of what hell has been made out to be and the devil has been made out to be. But I often think of time and space, this dimension, as something that was a tiny mad idea, and we need a way to explain it. So there's the snake in the tree, and the deceiver manifests as the snake. The Garden of Eden, it's a great story depicting the ejection from Eden, right, where God sends them out into the world. But the whole thing is, there can be no separation unless it was the will of God, and it's not the will of God because God is whole. Right? Therefore, it only exists in a dream, in an illusion. So it's a dream of separation, a dream or an illusion of separation, from which the counter dream of healing, of forgiveness, of ascension, of rejoining, of unity, etc., etc., comes to take the place of the old fearful dream. So being honest about, yes, I'm terrified of Satan or whatever, who was just an angel. He was just sitting around minding his business, examining the tiny mad idea with the rest of us. And for some reason we put him in charge, let's say. I'm just making up a story here. None of us knew what happened. We all got sucked into this other dimension. Like, where are we? Marcel Marceau, like, what's going on here? And so we didn't know. Satan seemed to have an idea. Let's leave Satan in charge. And of course, Satan's been yakking away as ego mind for a long time with no real answers. All of a sudden, hey, Satan, forget it. You're not in charge anymore. We're just going to give this one to Jesus. He's got it, okay? And he's probably glad, right? Satan's probably glad. I'm just making up a story, remember? Satan's probably glad. He's sitting back going, phew, I was really fucking this up. I didn't want to say nothing, but... it's funny. Just disregard that last story, last few minutes. It's all symbolic. It's all an idea. God is an idea. God is mind. Okay? Love is an idea. Everything is an idea. Give the ideas that you don't like to the Holy Spirit for healing. Keep the ones that you do like. And eventually, even those, you'll realise that I don't even want to keep these. You know, I'm going to offer my whole world. Like Jesus says, give up the world, not part of the world. I'm going to offer my whole world to the Holy Spirit. But initially, you're kind of doubtful about that, and you just want to give the bad stuff. And, you know, if I can just get rid of this crappy stuff, Jesus, I'll be happy. It's not a bargain, remember, you know. But Jesus knows that I am doubtful. Put your fingers in these holes. Jesus knows that I'm forgetful. That's the nature of time and space, forgetting. All of that sort of stuff. So I think it's best to make hay whilst the sun shines and to be about your Father's business as quickly as you can. But sometimes realising what's right in front of your face actually takes some coming to. It actually takes some recognition, and sometimes the learning opportunity has to go round and around and get more and more intense before I finally start to pay attention to what's actually happening. So I hope I've done that justice. I know it can be a very loaded subject. I know there's a lot of historic references. It's huge, really, it's huge. I mean, the idea of hell has been used to threaten people and to control people for thousands of years. And now, now we're living in the grace of God. We're learning that we're sustained by the love of God. We're learning to let go of our fears, including fears of things that are beyond our pay grade, really. I'll just leave that pay grade to Jesus. Peace.